Hello world, it's Birdo Prey 5 Cupflaw, and welcome to Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 3, Episode 1, Grounded. And this episode takes place right after the season finale of Season 2 ended. Captain Freeman had been arrested for allegedly destroying the Pakled home planet with a bomb. Obviously ridiculous. But the episode begins with the crew grounded. That's the title of the episode. And we get a FNN news story that tells us about what's been going on with the trial. The crawl at the bottom of this is most funny, probably one of the best parts of the episode. It tells us about um, let me go back and read it. First off, we know that Admiral Jellicoe is still a thing. He's been promoted to Admiral, and he has banned the Zuluban sisters from performing on starships. The Zuluban sisters were earlier in Lower Decks. They did the choo-choo dance. Nobody gives a shit about them. There's some news about some sports teams. The Buffalo Solar Knights eclipsed London Kings in game 1 of the ELDS. I'll be honest, I don't know what the ELDS was. I didn't look it up. I don't know. What was more interesting is that a 6-year-old Zach Dorn, the youngest to be crowned Stratagema Grand Master, the Zach Dorns were the species that was in the Next Generation episode where Riker had to fight Picard in mock battle. And the guy who came aboard, he was a Zach Dorn, and he was a Grand Master at Stratagema. And Riker played him and lost right away. And, he just thought it was a great thrill to play him. I guess it was a season 2 episode because Dr. Pulowski was there and she convinced Data to play him because she felt Data couldn't lose. Data ended up losing to him, and this really screwed Data up. And they were like, oh, it's no big deal. You just lost to a Grand Master. And Data's like, you don't understand. I should have won. I'm a perfect artificial being. And Data took himself off duty because he thought he had to run diagnostics. And at the end of the episode, Data ended up winning by playing. He changed his strategy. Instead of playing to win, he played to tie. And this drove his opponent crazy because his opponent got angry that Data was passing up easily winnable scenarios. So it screwed him up, and the guy quit angrily. And they're like, "You won, Data. You won." And Data's like, "Well, more specifically, I didn't lose, but it wasn't a true win, but it was a win." Anyway, that one of those species, a 6-year-old became Grandmaster at Stratagema. So it was just cool to see that continue on. But the most fun of the crawl, completely the member berry, was a country stampede. Dozens of teens injured, rushing the stage at a Sonny Clemonds concert. And you're like, oh, Sonny Clemonds? Who the hell is Sonny Clemonds? Sonny Clemonds was the country singer in the Star Trek TNG final episode, final first season finale, The Neutral Zone. He was one of the 3 or 4 people who were cryogenically frozen at the end of the 20th century. And he was the guy who asked Data to go on tour with him at the end of the show. And Data thought about it for a minute, but decided he was better off staying on the Enterprise. Anyway, Sonny was like, oh, all my stuff is brand new again. Nobody's ever heard it before. And so I guess it worked out for him. He is now a country sensation. I thought it was hilarious. The high point of the opening of the episode, if you were, for me. Less interesting was that Mariner is now with her father on Earth. Her father is, of course, an admiral, and Mariner's going crazy. She hates being on Earth. She hates being grounded. She hates that she can't do anything to help her mother. Meanwhile, her father is very confidently saying over and over again that you don't have to worry about it, Mariner. The system will work. Just have faith in the system. And Mariner's like, how I have faith in the system that's putting my mother on trial to begin with. And the father's like, listen, we're Starfleet. They're good people. We know what's going on. Don't worry about it. And Mariner is still just getting more angry, throwing plants. So I guess the Admiral has a collection of rare plants. I don't know. She's smashing plants around. Anyway, her uncle calls, or an uncle, an admiral. I guess she just calls him uncle, whatever. Another admiral calls Admiral Freeman, or whatever he goes by, and says, listen, we got some bad news. The judge on the case turns out to be some judge they don't like. And Mariner says, oh, is she the planet's right cuckoo crazy person? And, that's a dig. That's a dig at states' rights people such as myself. And I got it. I recognized it. We're crazy. If you have the states' rights leaning, they think you're nuts. I get it. And I don't blame them, because to be honest, yeah, I would probably throw a lot of these people in jail, but not Captain Freeman, not unless she was actually guilty of something. And we know as the audience, she isn't. So, but whatever. This just gives Mariner more reason that she feels she has to do something, and she smashes more plants and runs out of her father's office to go on the rest of the episode. It brings us to the opening title credits, which don't seem any different from last year. I didn't do an exhaustive frame by frame check, but they seem pretty close. After we get back from the opening credits, we wind up on Boimler's vineyard. Apparently, we open up on a vineyard that looks very much like the Picard family vineyard. And you're like, oh my God, are we at Chateau Picard? No, we are at Chateau Boimler. But of course, it turns out Boimler family doesn't make wine or even grape juice for that matter. Their vineyard is to make raisins. Oh my God, I just noticed there was a change in the opening credits in the Borg battle, which is the one part of the opening credits they do seem to change from time to time. There is now a crystalline entity next to the Borg ship. I didn't even realize the crystalline entity. There it is, huge, plain as day. Not the exact crystalline entity, but something very similar to it. So that was there. There was a change. Crystalline entity added to Borg sequence. Anyway, so we're back on the vineyard. We see Boimler picking grapes, and you think he's got the hat Picard was wearing at the end of All Good Things. Anyway, he sucks in a fly and coughs up, and Mariner comes to him and is like, come on, man, what you doing here? We gotta help the captain. And Boimler's like, listen, I hate being here. These goddamn, she's like, isn't this a winery? He's like, no, we make raisins. They make raisins. Anyway, every 2 minutes, not even every minute, there's a beautiful young woman throwing themselves at Boimler, wanting to be alone with him, trying to ask him for help on how to do this or how to do that, as like a wink, wink, like, come, help me in somewhere we can be alone. And every time Boimler doesn't get it, he thinks they're really asking a question. He's like, come on, you know the answer to this. You put the green grapes with the green grapes and the red grapes with the red grapes. I don't need to go into the back room and show you how to do it. And then finally, the last woman is literally just, Boimler, I'm covered in mud. help me get naked to wash it off. And he just yells, use the hose, whatever her name is. And he goes with Mariner. Mariner is looking at all this happening, by the way. And she just has like a smirk on her face. Like she won't tell him, like, hey, these girls want you, by the way. She won't do that. Even though she claims to be his friend, she's too interested in saving her mom. And you know what? I guess if Mama Prey was on trial for blowing up a planet, I would want to help her too. I really can't blame Mariner for this. So they realized the only way to get to the Cerritos, which is up in dry dock somewhere, is they need an engineer. So they did Rutherford. Anyway, then we get a picture of Cisco's restaurant. The Cisco's restaurant from New Orleans. And that's where Rutherford and Tendi happen to be eating dinner. And they talk about how they wanted to go to Bozeman, Montana, the site of Zefran Cochrane's first warp flight. But Tendi never went anyplace. She never left San Francisco during her time at the academy. Anyway, the trial is on TV. And they were talking about how they couldn't understand how Mariner was living through all this, how she was taking it. And Mariner came in on cue. And they're like, wait, were you waiting for us to bring you up before you came in? And she's like, no. And of course, Boimler says, yes, she was. So they're eating dinner. They have a Tabasco sauce called Petrocel Hot, like instead of Petrocel White from the Jem'Hadar, Petrocel White Hot, something like that. Petrocel White Hot. So that's their Tabasco sauce. And of course, Mariner puts a bunch of it in her food. She can eat it, no problem. Boimler takes one little pinch of it and he falls over. He's too hot. So they have to go into the transport. They basically got to steal the Cerritos. We're now in like a search for Spock a little bit. They got to break into this transporter facility. There's one guy in the transporter facility. They got to knock him out. But it turns out he's a lovable old man who reminds them all of their grandfather. They're afraid that nobody wants to hit him. He says, you can call me Denny. He's like, what brings you to my dusty old transporter pad? And I said, oh, we're from the academy. We wanted to learn about your transporters. He's like, oh, say no more. He's got gout, which upsets me. You would hope they would have cured gout. He's got gout and he's got transporters. So they're like, just distract him. And Rutherford sees all these old transporters from throughout history. He says, wow, they're classics. Did you clean them up yourself? He's like, yeah, he worked on them. It's what kept him going. And Mariner's about to knock him out until he said it was the thing that kept him going until his wife died. When his wife died, and then they all felt bad. And then he says the only thing that kept him going, and he's like, the only people who come in here are people usually trying to steal my transporters. And he takes out a phaser and aims it at them. He's like, you wouldn't know anything about that. And they all apologize. And he says, I don't blame you one bit. He's been following the trial. He doesn't trust the judges. And he's like, so Mariner's like, can you beam us up to the ship? He's like, I would if I could. And this was something they said on the news early on. There's a swarm of some glowing alien creatures that happen to be passing Earth. Anyway, they act as a natural transport inhibitor. They're not able to beam up to the ship. So it's the only time they can't beam them up. But then they remember that they can beam to Bozeman, Montana. Because in Bozeman, Montana, where it's been turned into a theme park. where Zefran Cochrane made his first warp drive jump. And there's the statue of Zefran Cochrane, and Zefran Cochrane's voice is there. He's like, enjoy where we made first contact. And you can see, he's like, oh, it's like post World War III Earth. There's the jukebox. There's the first contact ship of the Vulcans. It's got a slide on it. And Mariner's like, no, you can't do the rides. We can't go anywhere else. We came for that. And we get a beautiful view of the original, or a recreation of the original Phoenix rocket lifting off that we saw in the wonderful movie Star Trek First Contact. And we've got Zefran Cochrane all over the place because it's his theme park, more or less. So they say no food or drink on the ride, so everybody finishes up eating what they have. Anyway, the ship is basically pre-programmed to just blast 5 people up. They go around the Earth and they land again, but Rutherford is going to override the control system once they get in orbit to take them to the Cerritos. So anyway, the 4 of them go in, and then a 5th guy gets put on the ride. He's not supposed to be there. He's afraid of space flight. Anyway, then we get a hologram of Zefran Cochrane, who's flying the ship, and he puts in the rock and roll song that, again, they played in Star Trek First Contact, Magic Carpet Ride, Steppenwolf. And so this is a great throwback to Star Trek First Contact. They kind of mixed a whole bunch of movies together, and so Rutherford has to override the thing, and Zefran Cochrane's hologram kind of goes nuts a little. We get a great the warp engines come out, and Mariner overrides, and they go, instead of going to wherever they were supposed to go and come back, they go to the Cerritos, and we get this pretty good picture of the Phoenix. I gotta say, I love the anime. I love this animation of the Phoenix. And we see the Cerritos in space dock. Apparently, this is one of millions of space docks, and they're able to connect to the Cerritos. Anyway, so the guy that the 5th guy on, who's not a Starfleet officer or anything, he decides that, hey, he's no longer a botanist. He's Gavin the pilot. He's going to explore the galaxy on his own. So Rutherford and Mariner give him their blessings to take the ship. And he's like, this isn't the last you'll hear of us, and of Gavin, and he flies away. So anyway, the whole reason they went to the Cerritos was because Mariner kept his own set of logs, and they wanted his logs to bring to the court, because apparently the logs that Captain Freeman had been not erased, but falsified. So the logs were wrong, and nobody would have thought to falsify Boimler's logs. So they figured they could get Boimler's logs and bring them down into court, and that would free Captain Freeman. But they get up there and they find that Boimler, he didn't keep the most professional logs, right? He has a whole bunch of things about things that he had gas, and he had problems pooping, and, dick and fart jokes. And Mariner's all upset. She's like, we can't use this in court. We'll be laughed out of court with this. And Rutherford's like, listen, they've all got the date and time stamps. We can still use it. And Mariner's like, nobody's going to listen to this. They don't even listen to the captain. And Boimler's like, it's Starfleet. If we can't trust Starfleet, who can we trust? And this was the point where I knew how the episode was going to end. I realized, let me guess, This whole thing is too convenient. This is a secret mission. Freeman isn't really on trial, or she is on trial, but it's all a fake to get to the real person who really did the bombing, and that it's all a secret ops, a secret mission. And spoiler alert, it turns out I was absolutely right. But anyway, Mariner doesn't understand this. So Mariner steals the Cerritos. They weren't planning on stealing the Cerritos. They were planning on just getting the logs. Now she steals the Cerritos, and she doesn't want Rutherford, Tendi, or Boimler to get in trouble with her. So she pushes them off the ship, but they decide to go with her, and they're okay. That's great. I don't know why the Cerritos looks orange. I'll be honest. The Cerritos never looked orange before. I don't know why it looks orange now, but it does. So they were on a shuttle. The Rutherford, Tendi, and Boimler were on the shuttle. They crash land a lot like Star Trek V. They crash land into the shuttle bay, but they make it. And that's the Joshua Tree shuttle. They make it. They get to the bridge, and Mariner's surprised that they're here. She's like, I didn't want them to get in trouble. I didn't want you guys to get in trouble. She's like, we're not going to let you get in trouble alone. And Tendi and Rutherford and Boimler, they all have a big fight. Then we get a starbase like K7 looking. And they're like, is the Cerritos scheduled? And they're like, no, it's that dry dock. It's not here. And then the Cerritos passes them and headed towards Earth. And they raise the red alert. Meanwhile, on the Cerritos, they're all still fighting Mariner for some reason. Rutherford runs and stops the Cerritos. He says, we're stopped. Mariner says, God damn it, give her back the controls. She needs to do something. She's scared. She's like, they took her in handcuffs and she couldn't do a damn thing about it. They could take her away forever and she can't stop it. And she feels so scared. She's actually crying. And they're like, whatever happens, we'll be right beside you. We're in this together. And they get a incoming message from Starfleet. And they're like, security, like, what's the nature of your emergency, USS Cerritos? So Mariner's like, well, say you took you hostage. And then, just as they're about to have to surrender, those glowy alien things actually file past the ship. And it turns out that they're attacking the ship. No, but they're not attacking. They're eating carbon off the hull. It's a massive mating season on the so that it's an orgy happening on the hull of the Cerritos. So Starfleet security is still saying it's an unauthorized launch. Please respond. So this is Ensign Tendi of the Cerritos. She's like, they're doing a science experiment on these reproducing organisms. She's like, this is a very important scientific mission. We can't be interrupted. The security chief says that they're coming aboard. And so they open the doors to let them up. And they're in this endangered creatures need help reproducing, basically. And it hurts them a hell of a lot. They're all being electrocuted. They're being gooed. They're getting all this nasty goo stuff on them. All these tentacles have electric charge. So the security guards say, well, yeah, we've seen enough helping these precious creatures. And they're really happy to see junior officers pursue science. So, all's great here. They just need to know the commander who authorized this. And they're all like, he's like, it's not like you guys just stole a starship. That'd be crazy. So who authorized it? And just at that point, Captain Freeman is back, along with the rest of the senior staff and the admiral. And they're like, we're clear. And she's like, I authorized it. The security people leave. She's like, what about the trial? Are you on the run? And the admiral's like, the trial's over. And it turns out, she's like, while she was on trial, there was a secret investigation going on. It turned out there was a known data fabricator who leaked the bad information. We get a great picture of the Titan. And then there was rather evasive questioning by Commander Tuvok, and they get the true identity of the bombers. That's straight from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, where Spock mind melds without her permission with the Vulcan chick, Valaris, I think. And anyway, they get the true criminals were the Pakleds themselves. The Pakleds blew up their own planet in an attempt to blackmail Starfleet into moving them to a more rich planet, a more resource-rich planet. And Mariner says, "Oh, why? Wow, I didn't know." And her father's like, "I told you this morning, Mariner. Trust in the system. Trust in the system. I told you it this morning." And she's like, "Well, I didn't know." Anyway, it feels like they've had this conversation 10 times already in Lower Decks that, this was Mariner's last straw, and her mother doesn't know what to do with her, and she's got one more chance. This is her last chance that she's going to stay in Starfleet, but there's nowhere else to move her, nowhere else to put her. So the mother decides there's one last chance she has this time, and this time she's no longer in charge. Captain Freeman is no longer to take responsibility for Mariner. She's going to have to report to someone else, and it's obviously not the father, because she doesn't listen to the father either. So Captain Freeman says, the next best thing you're going to have to answer to, and it turns out it's Commander Ransom. And she's like, no, not him. Even though last season or the first season, her and Ransom kind of got along. But from now on, Ransom is her mama now. That's what he says. I'm your mama now. As far as you're concerned, Mariner, I'm your mama now. So this is the worst thing that could happen to Mariner. And listen, that's probably one of the weakest parts of this episode, because they've had this happen literally at least 3 times that I can remember offhand. Anyway, the rest of the Lower Decks crew are cleaning out the shuttle bay from all the goo. And then at the very end of the episode, we get one more update from the news. The trial's over, and we have a kid who solved Fermat's last theorem in math. It's a pretty interesting theorem. We all know a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But for Fermat's last theorem, the thing is, if you, instead of using squares, if you increase the n, a to the n plus b to the n equals c to the n, we actually know it's not true for n equal 2, n equal 3, or 4, or 5. Any number greater than 2, it doesn't seem to be true. But nobody has ever been able to prove it. That a squared plus b squared can't equal a cubed plus b cubed can't equal c cubed, or a to the 4th plus b to the 4th can't equal c to the 4th. So no one's been able to prove that for n greater than 2. It's just that we know every time we try, we've never found another number that it works for. So Fermat's last theorem, it's out there in math that a to the n plus b to the n cannot equal c to the n for n greater than 2, but nobody's been able to prove it to this day. And so now we know in the 24th century, a little kid does in fact prove it. And I thought that was funny because, I'm kind of a math nerd along with everything else. And then we get one more final scene after that, and the ship, the Phoenix, who was they said stolen by Gavin. Well, it gets, I don't know, rescued or picked up, and we see a runabout class pull up next to the Phoenix. I think the scale is off. I don't think the runabout and the Phoenix are that close in size, but it's still a really nice picture. And Gavin is all, he doesn't want to give up. He doesn't want to leave his ship, but they pull him out and they save him. And that is the episode Grounded, season 3, episode 1 of Lower Decks. And I'll be honest, it was a pretty strong opening episode. I really enjoyed it. I really loved the callbacks in the beginning, the opening crawl. I love that it was a mix of pretty much a lot of the TOS and movies and First Contact. You got a lot from Star Trek 3, a lot from Star Trek 6, and a lot from First Contact. They know what to pull off of. They do reference their own history quite a bit. It's nice to see them build up a legacy. It was a little weak that every season Mariner and her mother come to this place where, like, okay, this is the last straw, but it's never the last straw. It's been 3 or 4 last straws, and she's still, obviously, we know this season, okay, this season Ransom is going to be hard on her or something, but I guarantee by the end of the season, her and Ransom are going to be buddy-buddy, like they were in the past when they had to be. So, I don't know. The problem is Mariner as a character wouldn't work in real life, right? In real life, and I even mean just in a non-cartoon setting where the universe doesn't reset every week. Mariner is an impossible character. But this is a cartoon. It's designed to be more fun. And you know what? I don't know about you, I can be more forgiving of canon issues on a cartoon. But even as a cartoon, to me, this show has far less canon issues than Strange New Worlds. So I'm looking forward to episode 2. Honestly, this was a pretty strong episode. I'm going to give this a solid 7, maybe even a 7.5 out of 10. I liked it, and I hope they can keep up for the rest of the season. I've heard they're going to be revisiting Deep Space Nine at some point this season. Let's be honest, I'm worried. I am worried about it because I don't want them to F up Deep Space Nine, but I don't know. If they do it well, I'm cautiously optimistic. We'll see what happens. The animation, I don't know if they've improved it, but the ships especially, they were really impressive this episode. I really enjoyed them. And, I hope you get a chance to watch it. If you happen to have access to it, it's probably worth checking out. But that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this review. I will see you again next week. Qapla' all. Bird out.